Welcome back to Bisexual Killjoy, the place where we know bisexuality isn't a phase, it's a phenomenon. I'm Bailey, and this is...
Jace.
Oh, my dear friends, how we have missed you. What a summer that was.
Oh boy, that Pride was intense.
Intense, awful, never doing it again. What's there to be proud about? Yeah, no, that was really quite the hiatus we had, huh?
Truly, we've been busy.
Yeah, when you last met us, we were burnt out bisexual killjoys, and as we return to you again, we are burnt out bisexual killjoys. Yeah, we both had very busy summers. For this one, for Pride, as a part of the Bisexual Resource Center board, in the events chair, and an overly ambitious person, I overextended myself. Are you shocked?
No, I am not. I've seen your calendar.
Yeah, this was even an overextension for me, I think. I went to like 14 Pride events, 16 Pride events, where we either tabled or had a activism talk or something like that.
Yeah, I think that you went a little too far out of your comfort zone in terms of energy limits.
Yeah, comfort zone, I don't think that exists for me, but definitely my ability, that has limits. And girl, what's wrong with you? Not only was I doing that, but we were putting together this anthology for the Bi Plus Book Gang and organizing all these other events. And then I had my wisdom teeth extracted.
You did.
I did. That sucked.
Yeah. I was avoiding messaging you for a time because I wanted you to focus on recovery, but it is so hard for me to not message you.
Stream of consciousness.
Everybody should know that my chat with Bailey is just a bunch of voice notes and random texts about the most random stuff ever.
Things I can't tell my therapist, I send to Bailey.
The podcast of the podcast.
Yeah, that's the private chat for us to work through some issues.
It's where we hash out ideas. It's where we figure out how to rearrange the calendar. And, you know, we make it all work.
We do. Will you look at this for me? I look at the link. There's nothing. Why did you want me to look at this? It's fine. You're like, I just wanted to be. Are you sure?
Bailey, you have the final seal of approval. You know that.
Oh, yeah, because I'm the producer.
Yeah, we're co-producers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the producer of the production.
I do the initial info dump and you make sure that it's legible to folks.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's my job here.
And we figure it out.
I'm like Hairspray. I push down all the flyaways.
But we did some pretty cool things this summer. I have big news. I got married.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
I was there.
I'm so excited. I'm just so happy to be a newlywed. Mm-hmm. I hope that this bliss lasts forever.
Aw. No, it does. When people say like, oh, the honeymoon phase ends, it doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to.
I'm really excited for both of you, though. I think that it is an exciting new chapter. And yeah, you can talk more about it if you want to. You say a little bit of something about the day.
A few details. Anna and I had planned on a really small, non-ceremonious courthouse wedding type vibes. But we thought about it for a little and we were like, actually, we want to do something nice. We want to celebrate how big this is for the both of us. So we planned together a wedding in like 10 days. Mm-hmm. And it was chaotic and beautiful and amazing. And I am so very grateful that my whole community that I built here in Massachusetts really did show up. They really showed up for me. You showed up for me. You were there. Lots of folks from the church were like, absolutely, we will make it happen.
They did.
And it did happen. And it was beautiful. And I got so many lavender macarons. We didn't have a cake, but we had lavender macarons. And I am so happy. I still have a few at home. I love those macarons.
Jace was so beautiful in their dress, and Anna was so beautiful in her dress. And I think you had like something on your heads or something.
Well, we decided not to do the whole wedding band thing because we were on this 10-day timeline. But we decided to exchange flower crowns because we still wanted something ring-shaped. And you made the flower crowns for us.
Oh my God, I did. I did. And just because people obviously care about the construction of these flower crowns, Jace's only real brief was purple, like bisexual colors. And I was like, say less. And I went to Michael's. And Michael's was serving because all of their summer spring collection had just gone on sale.
Heck yeah.
And I walk in 80% off. And not that like I would spend whatever amount of money, but I knew it was like kismet because it was just right there in the middle of the room. It had everything I needed. And I was like, Richie, buy me a bottle of rosé. I make a flower crowns tonight, baby. And I did. I was just like, la, 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 la. And it was so much fun and such a delight to be a part of your day in any small way that I could be. There's just so much love in that room. And you guys got married in this old-ass church that had an old-ass organ in the back.
Yes.
That worked, and they played.
They did. Dean played. Oh, my gosh. Whoa. Yeah. Everybody showed up so amazingly. Dean learned a whole new song because I liked the song. And he was like, say less, I got you. Another friend from the church, Lizzie. Oh, she's great. She's amazing. She was in charge of the flower bouquets
Oh, those
for
are
us
so
to
pretty.
hold. And they were so beautiful. I felt so lucky that, I had you in charge of the flower crowns. I had Lizzie in charge of the bouquets. And I was like, I'm not going to worry about it. I know that it's going to be lovely. And I know that it's going to be beautiful. I'm not going to think about it too hard.
Yep.
And it was. You know what? It was. I think that that's really the magic of community. And it also feels important to say Lizzie was amazing. And when she met you, Bailey, she was tying the corset in my dress. And she's like, so I know that today's about you, but I met a celebrity today. Her name is Bailey. And I'm so excited.
That was, Lizzie, if you're listening to the podcast right now, that was a very surreal experience for me. Whenever anyone is like, Bailey from the podcast, I immediately go, Bailey's voice from the podcast. Very, very hardworking Bailey's voice from the podcast. I'm like, it's two separate people. Oh my God. I don't know what to do with any of Thank you for listening.
It was honestly beautiful, all of it. It was great to spend the day with so many friends. It was great to feel pretty. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry. It was really beautiful. And I'm glad that we did that. Somebody close to me said, because I was bemoaning the fact that it was 10 days to plan a whole wedding. And there's no such thing as a small wedding, when there's big love to be celebrated. He said, you're never going to regret this. Like, you're never going to regret taking a minute to celebrate something this big. So I'm glad that you did that. I'm glad that you went for it. And I'm really glad that I did. We have these beautiful memories now.
Yeah, you do. I just love to see community emotion too. There's obviously so much love in that space for you both. And I want to say for our listeners who have had courthouse weddings, I fucking love a courthouse wedding because there is nothing that when my best friend got married at the courthouse, the justice of the peace was elated. It was like the best part of her fucking job. She's like, oh my, felicitations, come into the room. Stand here. You stand here. You stand here. The light is perfect here. Here, you have some flowers. You need some flowers. I'm going to go get some flowers for you. Like went out into the lobby. There was a bouquet of flowers out there, brought them in. And I'm like, I want to love what I do as much as this person loves what she does. So I just think that celebrations of love in general are perfect, like inherently perfect because they're just so mwah. That's me making a chef's kiss motion, obviously. And Jace, your wedding was just like one of those perfect moments. And I was so happy to be a part of it.
It really was. Okay, we fangirled over the wedding for long enough, I think. But it was really great.
Well, we're now back on our bisexual killjoyness of it all. And it's wild to think that we have been doing this project for a year and a half.
Wow.
And that we are on season 4. Given all of the bi-erasure going on in the world right now and kind of what happened with the Stonewall memorial just a few weeks ago, we wanted to root this season into bi plus history. Many of us don't even have a bi plus community, so it's hard to conceptualize that we have a history or a legacy to lean into to affirm our identities that emboldens us to either start communities or work even harder to find them. I was kind of looking back on the show notes from season 3 from the premiere and said on February 17th that things looked pretty bleak. Well, baby, it is fucking dark outside. That to me says that we need to safeguard our history more so than ever.
Absolutely. Over the past 3 seasons, we have not been shy about the fact that our episodes and the content that we cover are deeply personal. They're driven by our own pain points as bisexuals, as activists, as community organizers, and as academics. We've used this podcast to unpack the complexities of bi plus life, to share the big words and the big feelings, and to make sure that what we're learning, we're also passing on to you, because that's the only way that knowledge can flourish.
Yeah.
And because you deserve to know, to feel grounded, to be informed, to have the big words to describe what you're experiencing. And as we know all too well, bi plus specific anything is hard to find. So, as Bailey said, this season we're talking about history. We're talking about erasure, about how history books consistently overlook us, about how even the archives meant to preserve queer lives often, too often, just let us slip through the cracks.
And boy, oh boy, have we slipped through the cracks. But lucky for you, we have been rooting around under the floorboards, reading books, getting more plugged into the Bi+ community so that we can actually talk about history. Because to be perfectly honest, I didn't know a ton about it until very, very recently. But here's the thing. A lot of our history is written down. We are not the first bisexual nerds and busybodies who recognize that this work is important. However, due to the fact that our community is what one special guest this season calls decentralized, it's hard to point to a cohesive body of work that's also easily accessible. What we hope to do is take a step in that direction towards cohesion, in whatever small way we can as two people in a Google Calendar.
This season, we hope to give you, and us, honestly, a crash course in forgotten or overlooked Bi+ figures and movements, what erasure has cost us, the legacies we are building and that we don't have to rebuild from the start, and the strategies that we can use to actually preserve all of this and build on top of these giants. Our goal? To create something that helps you skip all of the detective work and instead step into a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of possibility.
But before we do that, a word from our sponsors.
Spoiler alert, it's us.
Woo! We make $1,100 a year. Woo!
Hey, we're gonna make $100 million in a minute.
I want one. I just want 1 million. That's all we need.
Bisexual Killjoy is growing, friends.
What started as just a podcast has now blossomed into a whole community project.
We're not only dropping episodes, we got culture commentary and hyper-personal essays just for you on our Substack. Get all your burning questions answered through our advice column, Give It To Me Bi+, and you can hang out with other Killjoys in our brand new Discord server.
The best part?
It's free to join.
But if you love the work we do and want to make sure we don't burn the fuck out, you can become a paid subscriber and you'll get sweet perks like bonus episodes, bonus posts, and exclusive discussion groups with your favorite Killjoys.
We'd love to have you in the mix.
Come join the community.
See you there.
And we're back, getting into the erasure of it all. I mean, look, when I talk about bisexuality in history, people tell me that bisexuals don't exist and it's this new phenomenon, when that just can't be true. People didn't just flick a switch one day, oh, I'm bisexual, blah, blah, blah. You can't tell me it didn't exist just because there wasn't a word for it.
I mean, I don't want to get overly philosophical here, but to that extent, I agree. For me, it comes up when I'm discussing The History of Sexuality by Michel Foucault. I'll say something along the lines of hey, there's no mention of bisexuality. Not necessarily in that specific text of The History of Sexuality, in others that we'll be discussing at the same time. And folks will be like, well, it's not really by erasure. It's that bisexuality wasn't easily conceptualized. And I'm like, I agree. I mean, that's fair, but also newer texts should mention bisexuality. And right now I'm thinking about Sedgwick specifically.
Oh my God, my beef with Sedgwick.
Man, I love Sedgwick's work up until they get so annoyed with the theoretical or the hypothetical bi person on the sidelines being like, hey, can you talk about bisexuality now, pretty please? And they're like, ugh, but why? You're just so overly concerned with labels. And it's what is going on?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about history, in general, historians treat queerness as this kind of aberration. I'll give that when a person is in obviously a gay man having gay relationships, and they were friends, and this is where the meme "and they were roommates" comes from, right? Because you've got lesbians living in lavender marriages in Boston, and they were they're just really good friends. They kissed on New Year's Eve in public. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know.
But when we suggest that bisexuality exists, that there's a possibility that this historical figure and this historical figure actually had partners of multiple genders, people get their panties in a twist about it. They're like, you're speculating. Okay, well, you're right. I didn't know them personally. I wasn't one of their partners. But why are you red in the face as you're telling me that I'm wrong?
I think it has a lot to do with the rhetoric that compulsory heterosexuality is something that you can suffer from. So all of these historical figures, right, they all suffered from compet. It's a pain, and they're only ever free once they liberate themselves from compet.
But that means they swing the other way completely. So therefore, everyone is homosexual.
And compulsory heterosexuality is not something that you suffer from. It's not an illness. It is something that you face, that you navigate, and that the world is, actively trying to impose upon you. But it's not an illness that you overcome, right? Like it's not a symptom that you treat and that it disappears. And I think that it's important to remember that. Like, yeah, maybe somebody who had relationships with someone of a different gender eventually realizes that they're gay and that's how life is going to be now. That's a thing that happens. But also living a long, fulfilled marriage with someone of the opposite gender is a real thing while also experiencing same gender attraction. It all, like, not the point.
I mean, I have a list of people that I want to talk about and sort of have fun little conjecture with, but I also want to talk about the dangers of bi erasure throughout history. It's this removal of saying that bi people don't exist, have never existed, are liars, or this, that, the other. And you see the play out here in the removal on the Stonewall Memorial for Bs and Ts, right? So only lesbian and gay folks were at Stonewall. Like, whoa, wait a second, what are you talking about there? That is like, if you will, a brick in the face against what really happened, what really transpired, what we know about history, because it wasn't 1,000 years ago, it was 70 years ago. And to me, it's just really dangerous to say Bs, Ts don't exist. You get really close to saying that queerness doesn't exist at all. And it just becomes easier to reduce our importance on history so that they can push us out and continue to not criminalize. What's the word I'm looking for right now?
Delegitimize?
Yeah, thank you. Delegitimize. I think we saw that in practice during the AIDS crisis because it was like gay men who were dying in droves. And this is not to minimize the impact that AIDS had on gay lives, but it is also to say that do you have any idea how many bi lives that we lost? We don't, because those numbers were all lumped together. And then bisexual men were treated as villains in this story, contracting the evil disease from the homosexuals and giving it to their good God-fearing heterosexual wives and all of this stuff. But we actually don't know.
I think that the struggle is that the history books and this narrative really brings us back to one of our episodes in season 1 about the epistemic contract of bi erasure, right? It's this overarching premise when anybody is writing about what is known and what is true that, of course, bisexuality doesn't exist, right? And okay, maybe you individually are bisexual, but everybody else can't be. Or maybe bisexuality does exist, but you can't be bisexual. And even if you were bisexual, why would you ever want to be?
Yeah.
And we do see that in the books. Some books will say, nope, bisexuality, not a thing, not mentioned here. And some will say, yeah, bisexuality was a thing, but we're also not going to name anybody specifically as bi, and we're not going to recognize bi-specific movements. Or when bisexuality is mentioned, it'll be in these really delegitimizing, stigmatizing ways so as to make it less desirable.
Yeah. I like to play this game called Are They Bisexual? Which the answer is always like yes, and I'll make a case for it. But in preparing for this episode, or this season really, as we were thinking about the activism of it all and thinking about bi plus movements and thinking about our leaders and our historical figures, I was also just thinking about historical figures in general. And I took 2 threads and I asked the internet, what historical figures do you think are bi plus? And I got a lot of names, like a lot of names. And some of them I was, okay, David Bowie, got it. But we also had some stuff that was coming out of the woodwork. And I'm just going to run through them and say whether or not I agree.
All righty.
So Herman Melville was the top one on here. For those of you who don't know, author of Moby Dick. Herman Melville was married to Elizabeth Shaw, author Elizabeth Shaw. They married for a long time. They had a working relationship. She was an author, but also, like many wives of authors, was editing his work, doing revisions for him. Even after he died, she was like defending his legacy. But he is, on paper, obsessed with Nathaniel Hawthorne. Like writing him what one could call love letters. Ooh. And being like, my dearest friend, dedicating books to him. And folks are like, oh, he was just a big fan. I don't know. I don't know about all that. I don't think Hawthorne returned his affections to the same degree. He was probably like, oh, weird.
Unrequited love.
Unrequited love. But that to me is super bisexual, right? You just have a friend you think is really neat.
I feel like intense platonic friendships are also very bi-coded, right? Because it's the higher tolerance for ambiguity. It's the embracing of, this is going to look different depending on the person. And that makes total sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot about my friendships with other people who are bi, including you. Like, I put as much effort into my friendships that I do my relationship.
Heck yeah.
And I don't think that straight people do that as often.
Yeah, I think that it's rarer to see, especially with more recent trad wife movements.
Oof.
But bi-plusness challenges that, and relationship anarchy challenges that, and queerness and queer community challenges that. And that's what's beautiful and expansive about this liminal space.
I totally agree, because we're sort of saying love doesn't have to equate to sex or romance, but it can just be as deep and meaningful and worthy of time.
I love love.
I do too.
Whatever shape it takes.
You're just like, when's the whole season on relationships?
Please.
Some other of these folks that came up in this list, I had never thought about because I don't know a ton about them. Like Audrey Hepburn came up more than once when I was getting responses to this. And I was thinking, like, yeah, that makes sense. I just think most people in Hollywood have flexible sexualities in general, even though they don't want to talk about it. But I couldn't find any articles about why Audrey Hepburn was perhaps bi. I just believe it.
Yeah.
Just period.
Alexander Hamilton.
Yeah. Okay. So this one is not, look, there's no, I'm going to put this in heavy sarcastic quotes, historical context for Alexander Hamilton having romantic feelings, but him and John Lorne spent a lot of time together. Okay, that's all I'm saying. They were deeply emotionally involved with one another. They cared a lot about where one another were. Whether or not they were having sex isn't really the point. But just like we were talking about around relationships, something about that shit feels bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
They spent a lot of time together. Like a lot. I think we briefly talked about this in our episode on class when we were talking about how many bi+ people are in the military. And honestly, I think the military is really bisexual. I don't care. That gets me canceled because, look, you're spending a lot of time in the field for people who are taking care of your life. Of course, you're going to develop emotional feelings for them, which is why Alexander the Great is on this list. I also wrote down every Greek and Roman hero ever.
Yeah, ever.
But we think about historical contexts when we say, oh, gayness doesn't exist, queerness doesn't exist. Bitch, look at the Greek and Roman cultures.
Mm-hmm. Heterosexuality as we understand it today is such a modern invention. It's so new. Foucault explains this, I want to say better than I do, but considering that he's a French philosopher, maybe not. Contemporary heterosexuality, contemporary monogamy is really, really new.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual flexibility, fluidity, understanding that love and relationships and commitment is a never-ending resource. It's an ever-expanding resource.
Mm-hmm.
That we know. That we've known for a really, really long time.
Look, it's just people. You can't tell me that in the millennia that humans have been walking around, talking, and having sex, that it's just, oh, it's all been compulsorily heterosexual. That's not how it works.
No.
Not me mad about it. Other people on this list that I was surprised to see was Abraham Lincoln. Again, I don't know that whole story. If someone's got some resources about why Honest Abe is bisexual, please send them to me personally, because I had a weird fixation on him as a young person. Don't ask me why. Still don't know. I had a picture of Abe Lincoln hanging up in my room.
Is it the hat?
No. It's this picture of him sitting with his elbow on his knee and looking pensive.
Oh.
And it wasn't even like, I think Abe Lincoln is hot. I just liked his vibe. Part of me wants to get that picture and then have someone Photoshop him in Doc Martens and cuff jeans.
Ooh, do we have any volunteers?
Fan request.
Yeah.
Let's see. We also had Hans Christian Andersen, which, you know what? I don't know. 3 names. That feels bisexual. Virginia Woolf, wasn't surprised to see her. Sappho was on here, and I bet that would get a lot of people stirred up about it. But again, you think about context. Everything is about context. Is Sappho living in a society where, like, oh, you can only choose one? No, probably not. She probably's got like a guy that she sleeps with and has a lot of roommates. That maybe her partner doesn't care that she's with. Yeah. I'll give this to the folks who say that bisexuality doesn't exist. Marriage has existed for a long time. Like, marriage for safety has existed for a long time. I mean, that gets in the whole, like, patriarchy of it all. We won't talk about that in this particular episode. However, I just think that if people get married for convenience, you care a little bit less what your partner's doing. That has nothing to do with you.
That is fair.
Lord Byron is on this list, and when people say Byronic heroes, I think they're talking about romantic heroes in the big R sense. But I want to say Byronic from now on when I'm talking about bisexual stories. Instead of Sapphic and Achillean stories, Byronic as well.
I'm here for that.
When I start writing my own bi+ smut, you heard it here first, folks. I'm going to, it's like this Byronic tale.
Heck yeah.
And not to mention that in mythology, you've had plenty of bisexual behavior as well. You've got, Zeus, you've got Loki. I don't want to get into the Jesus Christ of it all, but if you're going to tell me that Jesus isn't a bicon, I don't know. We don't need to talk about that right now, but I'm thinking it. He just had a lot of friends. He had a lot of friends of multiple genders, is all I'm saying, and they spent a lot of time together.
I think that it definitely has a lot to do with interpretations and translations of the books and the missing books. I remember a few years ago, I bought like a little book that had an English translation of the missing books in the Bible, which was like Saint Mary's book, Jesus's book, the one that he wrote himself, and I don't know who else. And I never actually got around to reading it fully, but there is definitely something there about it is not just quote unquote LGBT history that actively erases how people saw themselves, but it is all kinds of history. These histories are written by people, and people are biased. People's thoughts and biases change with time.
All I'm hearing is you said people are bi. But to move away from conjecture, I really want to dive into what this season is about, which is bi plus activism and bi plus history as we know it. But before we do that, a word from our sponsors.
Hey Killjoys, we've got big news.
The Bi Plus Book Gang is publishing its very first anthology, by all accounts, and it drops September 23rd.
This isn't just another book. It's a collection of stories, essays, art, and poems from Bi Plus writers from around the world.
It's about visibility, identity, joy, and resilience, and it's available in both print and ebook.
So if you've been searching for a book that feels like community, this is the one.
Pre-order your copy of By All Accounts today and help us put Bi Plus voices where they belong, front and center. So let's talk about why we got involved in Bi Plus research, academia, activism. I think both of us came from a place of spite because we saw a lack. Honestly, for me, it was like frustration. Why can't I find this? Why can't I find this? And every time I asked someone for a resource, they pointed me towards Robin Oakes, which is fine, but Robin isn't the whole story. It's just kind of disappointing when you know how many Bi Plus people there are, how much we contribute to the LGBTQ plus population, and say, no, there's got to be more than that.
For me, what I struggled the most with my professors was a lot of, I want to do work on Bi Plus struggles. I want to do Bi Plus history. I want to learn more. And they would direct me towards trans resources and trans books and trans history. And I'm like, yes, love it. Also, can we refocus, please?
Yeah, it's not what I asked you for.
Yeah. That was just the immediate reaction that I kept getting from everybody. And I'm like, okay, I really need somebody to get with the program that there is an epistemic rift that already happened and that I am parting from.
Yeah.
And that was like a really big struggle for me. I felt like I had nobody to talk to about everything that I was learning and everything that I wanted to keep learning about.
And in some ways, it feels good when you start talking about it because it's like, oh, I'm the only person talking about this very special thing. I have such special knowledge. But the deeper you get into the work, it's like, oh, I feel like I'm probably saying something that's already been said before. And it's not a good sign for me as a researcher that I haven't been able to find it.
I struggle with this so much because I was so convinced that I was doing something so new for the longest. I mean, it took me a couple of years to find other papers that asked very similar research questions. I don't actually think that says like bad things necessarily about me as a researcher, but I think that it says a lot more about how hidden these resources are. It's not like I can pick up an LGBT history book and flip to the B. I got so tired of not finding the B that I went to Bi Plus specific resources, and those are few and far between. My alma mater didn't have access to the Journal of Bisexuality. They didn't have access to books that were Bi Plus specific. And I was like, okay, then what do I do now?
Yeah. Wouldn't it be so nice for you to say, oh, let's see, what was I reading? I found Vice Versa when I was doing my first pass at my research for my master's. So I found Vice Versa, which was published in 1995. Very interesting given the theory we talked about a little bit earlier today, we'll talk about now, is 1995, the 90s were good for bisexuality in general, bisexual organizing. And that book is like Vice Versa, bisexuality and the eroticism of everyday life. And that's big E eroticism, not erotica. I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. this is something that we have been writing about and have been studying. There just aren't a lot of books. And then I started going into bookstores and going to the LGBTQ plus section and finding 0 books about bisexuality, but finding 2 books about asexuality and finding a lot of books about lesbian and gay studies. I'm glad those books exist. I really am. This isn't about tearing down other parts of the community, but it is saying I'm so fucking frustrated of looking for myself, knowing that I exist and being like gaslit by society.
Yes. It is gaslighting because you keep searching and it's like anything that is readily available will not confirm your existence. You go into a bookstore, nope. You go into my alma mater's library, nope. You search the online database for the library, nope. And it's like, okay, where do I go now? And eventually you manage to like slide in through the cracks, right? Eventually I did find the Journal of Bisexuality. Eventually, I guess I learned new skills or new websites. And I was like, where did all these bi books come from? Like, how are they showing up now and not before? And that is a hurdle that you have to jump through. And it is painful and it is annoying. And it requires a surprising amount of training to jump over it.
Which means that the bar for accessibility into bi plus history and bi plus research is so high that only people in particular spaces are going to be able to find it.
Yeah.
I think it says something about how bisexuality is treated, that the only place you can really actually find a bisexual category is in porn.
Yep.
Oh, am I fetishized? I think I might be. Maybe that's all my identity is good for, is sex. Maybe that's the only way it's legitimized, because these people of multiple genders are having an orgy.
Small reminder that being fetishized is not a privilege.
Yeah, it's not my favorite thing.
No.
Especially without my consent.
It doesn't feel good. And it's not like...
I know. And I don't want to derail the conversation by talking about that particular aspect, because there's so much more to bi plus history that we have been learning together over the last couple of weeks, months. Honestly, the more we work on this together, the more we learn. And I was like, oh, and then what happened? Because if you ask someone who is a bisexual figure in the LGBTQ plus movement, Brenda Howard, mother of pride. And everyone's like, here you go, bisexuals, go away.
Yeah. Honestly, that's how it feels like. And that's how it feels like theoretically, too. Every time I'm reading something about identity or acceptance of queerness, it definitely feels like, oh, here you go, bisexuals, now go away.
Yeah.
And it's like, but...
But I don't want to.
But I have more questions. Go.
I gave you what you wanted.
Yeah.
Stop being greedy.
Not that being in my vows.
Yeah, they were. Not the Bisexual Killjoy plug. So, in preparation for this episode, because I've had a lot of sleepless nights recently where I kind of just have to talk at Richie as I'm going to bed. And I was just kind of like, eyes closed. And I said, Richie, I think there are like 5 or 6 generations of bi plus activism. And he's like, what are you talking about? He wouldn't say it like that. He's like, oh, tell me more, because he's so Richie. And I was like, yeah. I think there are 5 or 6 generations and one of them is missing. And that's why activism right now sucks. And then I would go to sleep. But today I finally wrote it down with you. And I kind of want to walk this out so that the audience can be prepared for what we're going to be talking about this season. So after much deliberation, the first generation of bi plus activists are right after Stonewall happens. So Brenda Howard is a generation 1 bi plus activist. This is 1970 to 1985. I think that's like 15 years per generation with overlap between each one. And this is where kind of the whole LGBTQ plus movement as a whole is taking shape. And bisexuals are like a part of the movement. They are going to die-ins. They're being a part of things. They're marching like everyone else. And they keep saying, hey, what about the B? What about the B? Could we have the B in there, please? And eventually they go, all right, you can be the B, LGB at the end where you belong. And I mean, like, that's great. We are absolutely, I don't care what other people say. I don't care what the textbooks say. Bi plus people are there. And then generation 2 happens, and this is where the crossover is. So it's like 1980 to 1995. So in that 5-year overlay is when Gen 1 and Gen 2 are mingling. There's legacy building happening. There's education that's happening, connecting, mentorship, basically, in that very old classic word. I'm going to introduce you to society so that you don't have to be alone and reinvent the wheel that I just made.
Yeah.
And 1980 to 1995, this is when bisexual organizations are popping up. The Bisexual Resource Center gets going in 1985. And you've got other bisexual organizations that are happening in the States and in the UK. Don't actually know when the German one popped up, but it's like a global thing. Bisexuality is being recognized as a thing. And then Generation 3, 1990 to 2005. This is what I would consider the golden age of Bi Plus organizing, and people might disagree with me as they listen to this. And that's totally fine. Everyone can think what you think the best generation is. But this is when Bi Plus publications are really taking off. This is when you've got more bi visibility than ever. You've got lots of books that are coming out. We're given the flag in 1999, thanks to Michael Page. We're also given Celebrate Bisexuality Day.
Great things are happening.
Great things are happening. Bisexuality legitimized. And then Generation 4 happens. This is 2000 to 2015. Again, good stuff is happening. I think this is where more systems are trying to be put in place. Bylaw happens. We go to the White House. There's a contingency on Bi Plus health. Researchers are at this point starting to write about things because that landmark paper came out in 2011 about Bi Plus health inequity.
That's true. And the epistemic contract was published in 2000.
Okay, so there's a lot of...
There's a recognition happening on paper.
Yeah, that means it's real, right?
Yeah.
According to history, you have to write it down for it to be real. And then Generation 5 happens. This is 2010 until 2025. And I would argue that this is our missing generation. And no tea, no shade to any Bi Plus person who found themselves organizing during this time. This isn't about that. But given the historical context that we're looking at, there's like a distinct fall apart a little bit of the Bi Plus community and organizing in a way that there hadn't been previously. And we're going to talk about why. I bet you have some theories on why. Because then Generation 6 happens, and this is 2020 to, God willing, 2035. And this is what I would consider, Jace, this is you and us. We're Generation 6. Okay, so what is going on in 1970 to 1985, just from a historical context? AIDS epidemic, right? Then 80 to 95, still the AIDS epidemic, but also moving towards the new millennia. There's a lot of excitement and engagement, and the future is queer, that sort of thing.
And it's looking shiny.
Oh man, it's looking pretty pink, purple, and blue, baby. Who needs gender in the new millennia?
Gender abolition became a strong thing for a minute there. I feel like gender abolition has sparks.
Mm-hmm.
Folks will be like, yeah, and then it's like, and then, yeah, and then it's like,
Well, not like that.
Well, not like that.
And then Generation 4, 2000 to 2015, which I would consider a hope era because, oh man, we were really close to something good for a hot second there, weren't we?
I think, yeah.
2008, what a time to be alive. If you weren't alive and conscious in 2008, you really missed out. I'm so sorry.
Gosh. In 2015, that summer, I was, if you can believe it, a biotech internship. Back when I wanted to be an engineer, ladies and gents. So I remember going into the conference that we were having that day on biotech, and my friend being like, ooh, I can get married now.
Yes.
And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, look. And he showed me the article, and I'm like, that's really dope.
2015 Marriage Equality Act dropped. And that's something that queer organizers had been really, really working towards. I think that was perhaps one of the last moments of solidarity we've really seen in the LGBTQ plus community, because it was something that everyone deserved, everyone wanted, and they were like, we're going to push for this and push for this and push for this. And they did, and they got it passed, and that's rad as hell. So 2010 to 2025. So you've got Generation 5 being ushered in by Generation 4. And let's not kind of overlook the fact that many of these longstanding activists who perhaps were in Gen 2 or Gen 3 are still going. Like Robin Oakes is a powerhouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would consider her coming onto the scene. She's been involved in activism for a long time, but takes center stage in Generation 2. But what happens, because there's so much other external stuff going on in the 2010 to 2025 era, I mean, we got our first Trump presidency in 2016, which is a huge blow to the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, for so many marginalized and vulnerable communities in general, that it's the first, divide and conquer. Like we talked about.
That was truly successful.
Oh my God.
Because it, especially that first presidency, it really hit our hope, our dreams, these aspirations of how shiny things were looking not too long ago. And it was like, that I think we all felt really deep in our hearts.
Yeah. And what happens when people get scared?
We retreat.
We do. We pull away from community. We pull away from people who don't share everything that we believe in, which is not necessarily the recipe for a healthy community. And something we talked about earlier today was at this time, let me pull out my very official paper bag that I wrote on. Let's see. The rise of online spaces is what I wrote for Generation 5. Because 2010 to 2025, that's the Tumblr era.
It is.
It's when people become chronically online.
It is in that Tumblr era, and we'll talk a little bit about this throughout the season more, but it is in that Tumblr era where all of the label discourse begins to take a really big rise, virtue signaling takes a really big rise. You know, folks want to be good people. I want to put that out there. I like to believe in the good of people. I want to think that everybody genuinely wants to be a good person. And sometimes folks don't know what they don't know, and folks don't know how to go about putting those good intentions to good use. I think that in that chronically online era, that moment where knowledge is being spread in these really accessible ways, but also disinformation is being spread in these really accessible ways, things get kind of confusing. Original texts like Adrienne Rich's Compulsory Heterosexuality start getting a different kind of reading that's not being guided by professors and teachers who've been engaging with this kind of literature for a really long time. Things are being taken out of context. And I think that we also see a really big rise in this whole what about me phenomenon, where every post that you see on your For You page, on your feed, needs to be directly implicated to you, or else it doesn't feel right. And that's when like this hyper-personalized algorithm thing starts setting in.
Ooh, that's really interesting. I also just want to put this out there that we're not pro, like the only way to learn something is in college or from a professor. But I hear you. I think that when things are taken out of their context and they're like weaponized in a way to put communities down, that's dangerous. Like, how do you even push back against that?
How to push back against anti-intellectualism is a great question that I do not have answers for. I often turn to bell hooks for this. Bell hooks does speak on, hey, I don't buy into anti-intellectualism. I think that we need to talk about ideas, that talking about ideas is just as important as doing. Otherwise, we're not going to move forward. If we don't have new language, we're not going to move forward. So bell hooks has been kind of my North Star in that way, but I also don't think that she has any clear answers for me on how to fight back anti-intellectualism. And I don't have any clear answers for all of you. I think that what is important is to take things in context. Knowing a little is very, very dangerous. Knowing a little and thinking that you know a lot is so scary.
I think that's the key part, is knowing a little and thinking you know a lot.
Yeah. I miss being a college freshman. I miss being young enough to know everything. I miss feeling on top of the world and being like, yes, I know this because I read this one thing from a reputable source. The more I read, the more I write, the more I'm like, actually, I have no clue. I am very confused.
Well, I think that college is perhaps one of the only times people exist in physical spaces where their ideas are challenged in a constructive environment.
Yeah.
And with the rise of online spaces, and God, I sound like such a fucking boomer. I'm like, I'm tired of online Zoom rooms. But I do think that there's something about the magic of why Gens 1 through 4 really worked, is because these people were connecting in person or had to do a lot of intensive labor to connect not in person. In a future episode that we're going to have, we talk to one of the organizers and co-producers of the March on Washington, and learning how this monumental moment, not just for Bi Plus history, but for LGBTQ plus history in general, happened. And it wasn't through message boards. And he was really clear, like the internet existed, but not to the extent that it exists now. And, you know, phone trees were a thing, and there was a lot of paper that got printed. And you had to really want to be in that space. You couldn't just be like a casual lurker in a Discord server. You had to pick up the phone.
Everybody had a stake.
Yeah.
Everybody had a stake in that community, whether it was emotional, physical, intellectual, there was a stake. And if you wanted it to thrive, you had to put in some sort of work. And I think that that is so very crucial for the mentoring, and to remember to create that lasting legacy where if you asked me what was happening in the 1970s, I could tell you, not because I read it from a book, but because I've been hearing these stories over and over again and how important it is to have that oral history.
Yeah, because I talked to someone who was there in the 1970s.
Yeah.
That's how I know.
That's how I know.
So we're looking at online spaces becoming this thing, this meification, this echo chamber issue that's beginning to form. Not that things don't happen in the 2010s. Like I said, like we moved towards marriage equality. And then at that point, everyone's like, okay, everyone go home. We did what we came here to do. We got legitimized by the system. Sorry, that sounded shady. Anyway, what happens then is we're building, we're organizing, and then boom, 2020 happens. What happened in 2020, Jace? You tell me. COVID. So sad.
And I do want to take a second here. I do think that there is a really big downplaying of COVID and the effect that it had on us.
Oof.
And it is important to recognize that for a lot of us, not only did we get physically ill, but we're also genuinely traumatized.
There's a reason why people who survived the Depression hoard.
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of our landmark moments as a generation. Any kid born post-COVID is going to look back on this time period as so weird and so strange. And I don't think we should downplay what it did to our community. It took the most vulnerable of us. It either killed us or it made us even weaker than we already were. And we haven't been able to bounce back from it. And I'm not sure we ever will. Isn't that depressing?
It is.
Like, history is a downer.
History is a downer.
So what we're talking about here in terms of Generation 5 being the one happening in the Tumblr and COVID era, where at this point they were supposed to, in 2020, be mentoring Generation 6. This is when new folks were supposed to be coming on boards. They were supposed to be like, here's how you do it. Here's your first major conference. Maybe you don't talk yet, but you're going and you're connecting and you're making your friends that will last you a lifetime. But instead, we come out of COVID in 2022, 2023-ish. I mean, anyway. So we come out of COVID-ish and we are kind of looking around like, I want to get involved. Okay, here's this bioorg. How do I get involved? You're allowed to come in. You're allowed to participate, but there's no one there to teach you how to do anything.
And you're welcomed. And you're like, I don't really know how to do much. And they're like, it's okay, we'll teach you.
Mm-hmm.
But it is precisely because everybody is still dealing with the aftermath of COVID that you're not really taught what to do.
Nothing.
You're just kind of like, well, I'm just existing in this space. How help?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we'll let you know soon. But then soon never comes.
Or you do something and then someone complains, why did you do it that way? That's how we've never done it that way before. And you look at them dead in their eyes. Well, why the fuck didn't you teach me how to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Why weren't you here to teach me? And there's kind of, some generational clashes going on where we're trying to do things one way and the old guard is like, that's not how it's done. But they also can't connect you to the people who are going to help you do the things that they used to. So you're reinventing the wheel. In an interview that we've already done for a later episode, I'm sort of thinking about reinventing the wheel by basically like, I'm trying to invent a wheel while looking at a wheel through a window. And you're like, okay, I don't know how to get there. So I'm just going to take what I've got in this house and I'm going to try to make a wheel. And it's going to be some approximation of that. And that's just going to have to do. And it sucks because we lost a generation. We're starting over in a lot of ways. In some instances, I'd say we're worse off than we were 10 years ago, just because we're having fights on the internet about the legitimacy of bisexuality, how bisexuality is actually transphobic, how what we're doing is wrong. And it's like, we had this conversation 20 years ago. I want to do something else. So here we are with Generation 6. That's you and me. That's what Bisexual Killjoy is. We are what I hope in my selfish little heart is kind of a reinvigoration of bi+ activism and reaching more people and educating more people and saying, hey, no, it is legitimate. The feelings you have, so many other people have, statistically likely for you to have those feelings. And to try to go back to tabling and to go back to in-person events. But the cool thing about the internet is that it doesn't just have to be in person and it doesn't just have to be online. As soon as we're done recording this, we're going to a social.
Yeah.
Hopefully we see other people. And if we don't, we're going to have lunch and it'll be great. And I think why this work feels so hard is because it's decentralized. Bi+ organizing, queer organizing in general is kind of decentralized. We have no rallying point, which we'll talk about throughout the season. And how many people in the activist space think it is a strength because it allows every person to be a leader in this space. And while I agree with that, I also think it's that's good that everyone feels empowered to be a leader, and they should, but what are we leading?
Why do I have to build my own wheel from scratch looking at it through the window when we can just share one for a little while?
Yeah.
or when we can build one together.
Mhm.
I think that speaks to the rise of bi media, right? Bi educational media that's being done in pairs. Yes, that's us. It's also our friends at Give It To Me Bi. It's also two bi guys, by one bi guy now. But how important it is to find your buddy so that you can do it together. And I think that that's why I'm such a passionate believer in peer mentorship, especially when leadership is decentralized. We have a vague idea of what our core values are. We have a vague idea about what we're fighting for, but I need more. And if the mentors don't have the capacity to do it, which I respect, then our peers, we have to be here for each other. We have to stand up for each other. We have to share the tips and tricks. Hey, I figured out how to make a template on Canva to make it easier for you to create content. Let's share our knowledge. Hey, we figured out how to make editing easier. How do we do this together? Because there's space for all of us.
There really is. Something I talked about in the Give It To Me Bi podcast is how my audience isn't their audience and their audience isn't my audience. And that's the beautiful thing about there being so many projects. I mean, I know we are guilty of saying we want to do this and we never have the time to because unfortunately we live in, late stage capitalistic society where everything has to be monetized and we all have like 65 jobs. And I wish there was just a little bit more space where we could focus on this. I mean, ultimately, that's why Bi Plus movements fall apart because they're volunteer based.
Yeah.
When you volunteer your time to do something and then you're out of time, what's the first thing to go away? The thing I'm not getting paid for.
Which is why it is so important for us to not shy away from talking about monetary support and how important monetary support is.
Yeah.
Money is such a sticky subject, and we've spoken about this at length last season. But in order for free educational sources to remain educational free resources, they need monetary compensation. You need someone that their whole job, they're actually getting paid to make sure that this keeps happening. It is the only way that it's going to keep happening for as long as it possibly can.
And that's also how you get documentation and you can pass down what you learn to the next generation because I'm being paid to make guides. And so if you're listening to this and you're wondering, how can I get involved? I don't have any time. You would be surprised how far $5 will go,
Yeah.
As we go through the season about Bi Plus history, we're going to be talking about communities and organizations and long-lasting friendships. And we're also going to talk about how things fall apart. So this is going to be a good season in terms of you're going to be learning a lot, but also it might make you a little bit sad for the things that we've lost.
Truly.
So why is Bi Plus history important? Because if we don't write it down, no one will.
I'm legit about to start crying.
Yeah, they don't want to.
If we don't teach each other, if we don't learn from each other, if we don't learn about who we are, things really are just going to disappear.
Yeah. In a political time such as this, we're recording this on August 23rd, and who's to say where we're going to be in 6 months? I mean, there might be a time where historians look to resources like this. And I don't mean to say how important we are, but we are, we're marking the passage of time.
We have to remember how we got here so that we can either replicate everything that worked or avoid everything that didn't.
So as we go into this season, what kind of advice do we have for our listeners?
For our allies, supporting Bi Plus people means more than just reposting or sharing during Pride. We encourage you to start asking where Bi Plus people are when we are missing from the panel, the curriculum, the history books. It means calling out biphobia and bi erasure when we aren't in the room physically. If you have a platform, amplify Bi Plus voices. If you learned something this season, talk about it, share it with others. If you have access, power, or resources, share them.
Oh, share them.
Stuff them in people's faces.
Yeah, that's all I want. I want to be aggressive about it. We said Bisexual Killjoy. And for our Bi Plus listeners, look, this whole season is for you. We don't do this stuff just because it's fun or because it tickles our quick little brains. We do it for you. And we want you to see yourself in this work, in your history, so you can help us educate more people by sharing our episodes far and wide. And for the LGBTQ plus organizers who, stumbled across this on accident, you thought, man, I guess I'll listen to these people ramble for a while. Please stop treating us like a side note. Bi Plus people are on your boards. They're going to your events. They're organizing things. And by minimizing their history, you're minimizing our history. And I mean that in the broader queer sense.
And for those of you who want to be a part of Bi Plus history in a more literal sense, we would love to have you join the Bisexual Killjoy volunteer team. It also comes with a few perks, so it's nice. Please check out the link in the notes. This season, we are going to be covering some amazing things and hearing from some amazing people. I am telling you, you are not ready. We are going to be talking about bi+ orgs and how they even got started in the first place, what they have achieved. We are going to be talking about our classic Bisexual Killjoy spite and how so many amazing projects start off by just being unhappy with how things are being done now. And we'll also be covering the importance of writing things down. Why do we have to be in the archives? Well, because they need to know that we exist and that we left a legacy.
Thank you for tuning into Bisexual Killjoy, where we know that bisexuality isn't a phase, it is a phenomenon. To support us, share us with your friends, subscribe to our Substack, and rate our podcast preferably 5 stars. As always, we do want to hear from you. You can share your stories with us on Instagram or via email at bisexualkilljoy@gmail.com. And we would love to answer your questions in our advice column, Give It To Me Bi+. So you can check out the Substack for more information on that. And until we meet again, keep being a bisexual killjoy.
Stay bisexual and stay strong.